So, Fable. If you watch my retrospective on the game, you may already know how it was a pretty good game, overhyped to hell and back by one Peter Molyneux, and that, in spite of everything, eventually became one of Xbox's most iconic titles, spawning a franchise that would become synonymous with Microsoft's own console. Seeing a massive success, selling 600k copies by the first month, becoming Microsoft's, at the time, fastest selling game, LionHead and Big Blue Box, the studios behind the project, started working on a PC port called Fable: The Lost Chapters. DLC was also supposed to be a more complete version of Fable, an expansion on top of being a PC port that would also be released on console, a year almost to the day of the original game's release on September the 20th, 2005. So, what does this expansion to the former Project Ego have in store for us?
Every person is simulated, every town, even down to every blade of grass.
Unlike the base game, I couldn't really find much about the development of the PC port. It's not exactly surprising, admittedly, but if you are expecting this section to be as in-depth, I am sorry to disappoint. To the best of my research, I couldn't find much about the Lost Chapters development after the base game was done with. So what then? Well, may as well make the time to do some corrections to my last video. Starting off almost at the very start, isn't that a good look? When I talk about the game's working titles, I said one of those was Mistworld. I don't know where the hell I got that, as the actual name was in fact Wish World. This was pointed out by the Fable historian in the comments, but I really should have paid more attention to it before writing that down. That's already an embarrassing mistake right there. When we get back to Oakvale, Maze doesn't actually tell us our sister is in Twin Blaze camp. No, he mentions a seer being there that could tell us where Teresa was. If you paid attention, you may have noticed I mentioned something about the seer after defeating Twinblade, which might have confused some of you as I never mentioned her beforehand. I mentioned being able to cheat in all memory games. That's not exactly accurate. The memory game in Bowerstone, you cannot cheat in any way as spells are flat out unusable there. What happened is that I got confused with another gambling game called Card Sorting, where you have to sort cards from lowest to highest in the fastest time possible. You can actually cheat in this one as opposed to the Bowerstone pub game. For all intents and purposes, I didn't even mention this game at all, mostly because I always forget it exists for some reason. I say you needed to shoot the Kraken until it died, while showing you could actually just melee it. Oops. The enemies I called Banshees are in fact actually called the Screamers. This is a combination of two things, me being Italian and playing the Italian version of the game, where some of the creatures' names were changed, the minions are called Horrors, for instance, and me getting confused with a similar and far more intimidating enemy in Fable 2, which are actually called Banshees. After defeating Maze, we aren't immediately brought to the guild like I implied. We can actually go wherever beforehand, then talk to the guildmaster. This is the most embarrassing one for me. When I read Peter's letters, there's a typo and I noticed it after publishing the video and I kinda died inside. I wouldn't cringe anywhere else, but I was actually proud of that section, so having a mistake like that hurt me a little bit. Also, this isn't a mistake per se, but the audio mixing was terrible. Even bearing in mind I could hear music fine on my end when others apparently couldn't, the audio volume fluctuates on multiple times. This is a combination of me recording some sections on different microphones and different situations. The part where I talk about the tutorial was recorded on a smartphone with no mic, and you definitely notice. It was the first part I recorded, and like a fool I didn't think to redo it. You can even hear the chair I was sitting on squeaking multiple times in that section. Once I realized that in post, I made an effort to record on my bed until I found a new one to replace it, but that still doesn't excuse the poor audio mixing. Hopefully this one ends up better. I think that's it. Nothing else I couldn't notice, which isn't to say that's all the mistakes I made, far from it. Knowing myself, there's probably more I didn't even notice. Here's hoping that's not the case. There's also some stuff in the base game I neglected to mention. You can both fish and dig up treasures throughout Albion in specific spots. For fishing, that means any body of water, though if you do see ripples, that usually means there's a special item waiting for you. And for other grad treasures, it's usually in areas such as fairy rings or under statues and such. The world of Fable has its own economy. You can completely destroy it, though I never bothered to learn how, cause money is, again, a non-issue. Sometimes merchants will have a surplus of a certain item, meaning they'll pay you less for it and sell it for cheaper, or sometimes they'll face scarcity, meaning they'll sell it for more but also buy it for more. You can definitely game the system here with certain items whose express purpose is to be sold, such as barrels of beer and crates of fruit, to name a few. I also forgot to mention that another thing that changes your physical look is what you eat and drink. Beer, red meat, and pies will, in fact, make you fat. You can trim down by just not eating for a few hours. Just like real life. Silver keys are collectibles that you'll want to collect, as there's silver chests that you can open only if you have the required number of silver keys necessaries. These chests hold nice goodies and potentially legendary weapons, so yeah, open them. In Bowerstone South, Oakvale, Twins Blades Camp, and Knottle Glade, every night you can find a bunch of dudes doing what dudes in their 30s and a midlife crisis do best, thinking they're Tyler Durden, and start a fight club. If you participate in these, you put down a set amount of cash, thrown down with these dudes, win, on to the next one. Get hit too many times, independently of how much health you lose, and you'll get separated from your cash and you will have to do things all over again. Finally, I made a joke about Fable allowing you to become a 19-year-old with 70 years of experience. Without any context, this makes zero sense, so allow me to elaborate. Every time you level up any stat, you automatically age 0.7 years. This is completely independent of how many days have actually passed in game. So what this results with is that 25 days might have passed since you graduated from the guild at 18 years of age, and yet somehow you'll be 55 or something. This is extremely noticeable too, as your character ages visually, but none of the NPCs do, so you somehow end up looking really out of place later on in the game as you look significantly older than anyone else. That should cover all my bases. There's a couple more things to mention, like hero dolls you get from gambling, but that's real completionist stuff and not worth wasting any more time on than I already have. So, how about we go on with the new content?
Downstairs, you might be big boss, but here you be Hedwig's slave.
See, as it turns out, Fable, tables, ladders, and chairs add some noticeable amount of content to the base game portion of Fable. A few silver quests are added, coupled with some new bronze ones to boot. These bronze quests include a small fishing quest in an area that was previously devoid of anything, helping a witch in making a potion to cure this child who accidentally ingested poisonous mushrooms. Yeah, let's go with that. A whole new area was added, the Darkwood Bordello, because if I ever open up a brothel, it'll be deep inside a dark forest where bandits and balverines live. This new area has a demon door, a new set of characters, and a small quest involving the brothel itself, where you can decide to free the prostitutes inside and make the brothel a shelter for women, make it so that the owner splits his earnings with you or flat out take control over it. Weirdly enough, it's one of the more content-rich areas that were added with the expansion. I gotta say though, the 1,000-something gold pieces you get every once in a while with this place are not enough. We can definitely do better. Ah, there we go. Time to show these bitches what real prostitution looks like.
Oh, no offense, but you look horrible, sweetheart.
Some clothes, some extra weapons. By far the biggest addition to the base game, besides the extra quests, is a whole number of cutscenes added that flesh out the story and characters more. Remember Brias, the odd girl I mentioned near the end of the previous video without much in the way of introductions? Yeah, that's because she doesn't get an intro proper at first. She just standing in the Bowerstone Inn gloating and making fun of you after your first mission. She never gets mentioned again until the very end. In DLC, she gets a proper introduction cutscene before relocating to the inn.
Ah, now this one looks promising. Oh, hello. You must be the kid Maze is always talking about. Can't imagine what he sees in you. Still, I suppose Maze knows best. But where are my manners? I'm Brias. No doubt you've heard of me. No time for autographs, I'm afraid. I have to get to Knothole Glade for an important mission. Speaking of which, if you came for a quest card, all the best ones have gone already. I'm sure the guild can find you something to do, though. I hear the kitchens need cleaning.
Furthermore, she's actually part of one of the new quests added into the game, where you have to protect her while she stops some of Jack's minions from summoning a weird entity. Huh. Wonder if we'll see it again. Brias will respect you after this mission, which is some nice fleshing out of the relationship between the two of you, and I reckon this is needed seeing as she will become a key part of the expansion portion of TLC. Speaking of fleshing out, Whisper! In the base game, she only appears in 2 quests after the tutorial and before the arena, both times relating to the orchard farm and only one actually being mandatory. Despite being positioned as our rival, she never really gets any more interesting in that role, leading to a pretty apathetic result when you have to fight her one final time against in the arena. If you decide to not be a massive dick and keep her alive, you'll find her in Oakvale in the tavern, telling you that she'll leave Albion and admitting your superiority as a hero. Despite not having much development, this scene stuck with me at the first time I saw it. I grew up on the original Fable release and never played the Lost Chapters until the game's remake in 2014, so seeing this scene for the first time really made me appreciate the character a bit more. Inside this nice bit of interaction between you and her, the only one where it really feels like there's some genuine friendship between these two is overall the final scene with Whisper. But I'll take it regardless. Or rather, I would had I not, you know.
He's done it!
Another bit of story expansion is given to Lady Grey. There's this area in the base game, the Grey House, that by its existence alone kinda implies Miss Elvira, seriously I'm very evil Grey, has a lot of secrets to hide. But in the base game, nothing ever comes of it. In DLC, however, during your courtship of the woman, you'll notice that there's a man in a cell in Bowerstone North claiming that she is a witch, and asking you to find out the truth, which conveniently is in the form of the ghost of the real Elvira Grey, found in the cellar of the Grey House. Turns out the current Lady Grey killed her sister and/or an entire family and took control of Bowerstone, which would go a ways to explain the whole evil goth approach. We are then given the choice of revealing her ploy to the guards or keep courting her. See, on one hand, that would be the morally correct option, but on the other hand, Thunder is still there. There is also a very interesting cutscene during our first day in the guild. This one introducing us to Sight, what would happen if Beef Jerky was rendered a man, talking to Maze. He claims Maze is ignoring the signs regarding Jack Blades returning and searching for the Sword of Eons, to which he will retreat to somewhere called the Northern Waste in order to find clues on what to do. Maze claims Sight is a crazy old coot that doesn't really to be trusted anymore, and we won't be hearing about Sight until the TLC portion of the game, but this introduction serves to make this mysterious character known to us from the get-go. Finally, Jacob Blades himself suffers a rather interesting change. So people that played the game on PC before and watched my video might have noticed a small change, something that wasn't supposed to be there. I may have modded the game to alter Jack's voice. See, in the Xbox version of the game, Jack sounds like you heard in last video, but with the release of TLC, something unfortunate happened. Our good, evil friend's voice has been pitched down significantly, making him sound like a demon because the people of Albion are that stupid.
It's the one, the only, the hero of heroes, Jack of Blades!
I have returned. After an eternity away from you all, Jack of Blades is back. This arena is all that is great in Albion, and you all that is worthy in it. I am honored to stand before you again.
I'm not going to sugarcoat this, I am not a fan of this change. Jack of Blades is an obvious villain, but he was somehow interesting in that he had a very roguish air to him. He was kind of atypical in that way, being obviously evil, but felt more like a charismatic and, well, not subtle per se, but it was more subdued, I guess. In DLC, his voice is now comical, almost, making a villain that was somewhat interesting into a Saturday morning bad guy. Definitely the one negative I can give DLC when it comes to the base game. And that should be it for the base game, funnily enough. There's some graphical improvements, or so I'm told, and there's a couple of new AoE spells that deal huge damage but are practically the exact same, they just change visually and are more so separated by the morality of your character. It really does feel like a lot of this stuff was supposed to be in the main game, but was cut perhaps due to time constraints. Better late than never, am I right, Peter?
I know some interesting things about Krakens.
The expansion starts off right where the base game ends, with us having decided whether to kill our sister or keep her alive. Finding ourselves in Oakvale in front of the graves of our parents, when we are warned by the ever-annoying guildmaster that our attention is needed back at the guild. Sight has finally decided to make his ass known again via Force Ghost and requiring our presence in the Northern Wastes, as these creatures called summoners have appeared, something that has been prophesied as to bring about the end of the world. So, you know, something we should maybe stop. The problem is, reaching the Northern Wastes is a bit of a bitch, and we'll need the help of something called the Fireheart, a relic that will allow us to summon a ship that will bring us to our destination. Bad news, the relic is behind a demon door. Good news is that the demon door, which lay dormant right outside the guild for ages, decided to now wake up. Even better, and frankly oddly convenient news, seeing we have Jack's mask in our possession, it decides we are strong enough to open itself for us. Within, we find 5 prophets encapsulated in these crystals. Below them, and right in front of us, a series of tiles with sun and moon iconographies on them. We are told that in order to get our hands on the heart, we need to free them one by one, stepping on the tiles and making every moon a sun. We need to be careful, because turning all tiles to moons will kill the prophets, preventing us from reaching the heart. Or rather, that was what all but one of the prophets had agreed to tell us, who, in a snafu to end all snafus, just blurts out that killing or saving the prophets doesn't actually have a bearing on the end result. What you do have to be aware of is the timer, as taking too long will result in the heart beating and burning us, dealing a considerable amount of damage. I actually really like this section for whatever reason. It's not hard, but I always had a soft spot for these type of puzzles. They're really simple, yes, There's something pleasing about picking the right path and changing all these styles to be the same. After doing the right thing, we get the heart and skedaddle out of there, where Briar Rose will tell us to meet her at the Hook Coast. She also mentions something that to this day bothers me to no end, and is one of the very few things I do not like about DLC compared to the base game. The existence of a weapon to rival the Sword of Eons, located within the guild, claiming that it would be a good idea to try and find it before we proceed. LionHead had the chance to make the final moral decision from the main game actually mean something, now that the game actually continues from that point instead of just having the game practically end there. Making it so that sacrificing the sword leaves you at a disadvantage for the rest of the game would have been a fantastic way to make the weight of the decision matter more in the long run. Giving you a good moral alternative is honestly just really cheap. And yeah, I can imagine the thought process behind this was something like, well, we wouldn't want to punish our players for not being assholes, which on one hand I get, but Fable is all about choices. But a good number of these don't affect us behind how our character looks, so having one big impactful decision beyond just the scope of the story would have been really cool. Instead, we get a consolation prize that is effectively just as good as the actual prize for practically free. Now, this is classified as a bronze quest and is admittedly optional, but the problem is that the option shouldn't be there to begin with. Whatever, may as well just show you the actual weapon. Say hello to Avo's Steer, practically identical to the Sword of Eons, if only lamer looking. Rummaging through Mazes' notes, we can see he was looking for the sword as a way to fight Jack, but wasn't deemed worthy enough to summon it. We approach these three tombs in the guild's courtyard, we watch a cutscene, and bam, we get the sword, who seemingly used to be a common guard sword until a mage hero named Solstice used it in a spell to save Bowerson from getting engulfed by a giant vortex, after which the sword disappeared. Sounds kinda random as a backstory and makes you wonder exactly how it would make it on equal footing as the Sword of Eons, but I digress, it's not like I will use it if I can avoid it. See, both the Sword of Eons and Avo's Steer share a similar problem. They are way too strong for the game's good. Acquiring them practically makes every other weapon you've obtained earlier or after completely pointless, as they are just inferior to them, and as such I will avoid them for the foreseeable future, unless I deem them necessary. Anyhow, off to Coast we go. Putting the heart on the lighthouse will make Jack's minions spawn and try to destroy it, alongside a new enemy type, the Summoners. We actually saw a glimpse of these dudes in one of the newer missions added to the main game, the one where we defended Briar Rose. These people are veritable assholes, dealing a lot of damage by themselves but doing 3 times as much if you wear plate armor, being that their attacks are imbued with lightning, something I didn't even know was a thing until very recently. They're also very tanky, making them feel like damage sponges. Done with one of them, 2 others spawn, which is a nice way for the game to show us that these twos are about as fun to deal with as pulling teeth. You have to be quick about it too, lest the lighthouse be destroyed. Once you've dealt with them, you have now spawned the Ship of the Drowned, which will take us to the Northern Wastes. Briar Rose won't join us for reasons, and off we go, hoping whatever awaits us isn't going to give us the cold shoulder. Get it? Cold shoulder, because it's a snow area, you know, the northern waste. Yeah, okay, I'll stop. After hitting the shores of this new land, we are soon met with a new variation of an old boss, the Heist Troll, which is fought in much the same way as the previous trolls, but looks cooler. Please, for the love of God, somebody stop me. Exploring the land gets us some new weapons, a few new pieces of armor, and soon to our destination. Welcome to Snowspire Village, the big new locale for TLC. Probably my favorite element in the game, as I, like most, tend to have a soft spot for snowy areas, and Snowspire is pretty damn big, making it feel lively and nice to explore. Oh, it even has a nice tavern with its own gambling minigame. That game being fucking...
Going off again, are you...
Okay, so that aside, Snowspire Village is pretty good. I'd leave here, I guess, providing I can avoid the tavern at all costs. But we do not have time to be bothered by this. We have a living corpse to talk to. Sight welcomes us to the village, feeling a bit worried that the summoners have made themselves known in Albion, and not just the wastes. We need answers. Answers we can only get through the Snowspire Oracle, a collection of faces that in our world would have a YouTube channel dedicated to the lore of an obscure game nobody gave a shit about but is now gaining steam as some cult classic. Bad news is that the Oracle is fast asleep and doesn't seem like it'll wake up anytime soon, so we must wake it up ourselves. In order to do so, we must get our hands on 4 glyphs, which doesn't seem like too much of a task at this point. We head towards a place called the Necropolis, which sounds just a smidgen less inviting than Snowspire Village. Our guard will let us in, and now we need to dig these glyphs up. 10 graves for us to despoil, each has a random chance to give us the correct glyph. Should we not get lucky, a red glyph will be dug up instead, and with it, minions and summoners for us to slay. The correct glyphs are yellow, each wrapping the name of one of the 4 faces of the Oracle, which I think is really cool. What isn't cool is how these glyphs will crumple in our hands after being dug up, but our hero's quick and can quickly ingrain the sign of them in his memory. Let's see, Yeron, Morik, Carlin, and Avisto. That makes Y, M, C, and are you fucking kidding me? Okay, so quest ends when we get the final glyph, which will require us to deal with some beefier summoners, which are always fun to fight.
Real fun, you guys truly are. I would love to fight these forever, people.
Back to Snowspire, we express ourselves in the only way we know how, through emotes, and we wake the Oracle up through the power of game music that I would be playing for the sake of the joke had I not been that scared of YouTube's copyright system. The Oracle renounces its beauty sleep and tells us that if you want to kill Jack, we will have to open the Bronze Gate, a giant door not too far from Snowspire that is said to bring about the end times, should it not remain closed. Well, that's convenient. Now, once this is done, you could just progress the story forward, but I think one of the coolest additions of the expansions is found here. The Oracle is a living lore dump, one we can access at any point via one of the 4 glyph emotes. Each emote, I eventually found out while writing this script, will give you different bits of lore, with Yeron focusing on the people of Albion, Morik on its lore and myths, Carlin on its creatures, and Avisto on Albion's history. There's some really cool stuff here that fleshes out the world of Fable so much, like the answer to perhaps a question I am sure just about everyone has asked themselves at this point. How are we still considered heroes if we can do evil deeds? See, turns out initially the guild allowed its heroes to only accept virtuous quests, but some believed this to be too restricting of their free will. A rebellion was started, one that included Maze and Weaver, someone who would end up becoming the guildmaster, a position he obtained after Sight vouched for him at the end of said rebellion, considering him to be a truly neutral force to not interfere with anyone's decisions. I would go on detailing so much more, but trust me, there's so much here that I think you should see it for yourself. But enough lore chats. We have a Bronze Gate to open, and with it an end of the war to sorta maybe not really start. And in order to do all of that, we need to direct ourselves to a place called the Archon's Shrine.
You have destroyed everything that mattered to me. You want to stay and insult me now too?
Oh hey look, it's Brias, who reached us via Callis Gate teleport, something we activated when we reached the Northern Waste for the first time. Again, why didn't she just join us, I do not know. She seems to be capable of translating the runes around the place and is telling us what to do in order to open the gate. We'll need 3 specific souls. Souls we can trap using Jack's mask and bring back here. The first one is the soul of the king of the arena. Killing ourselves isn't really on the table, it seems, so we'll need to find an alternative. Now, Who do we know that has been in the arena like we did and has a soul left for us to get? Oh. Oh! Hi, Thundy! Thunder has hit rock bottom, it seems, with no one seemingly willing to even give him a job anymore, which seems incredibly harsh, and this is coming from me. Again, I like Thunder, I just find his suffering to be unintentionally hilarious. Now, we could just go to the arena and find a soul there. The place isn't exactly doing well, to be honest, seeing as a whole bunch of creatures have escaped and are raising hell. It is at this point that I should point out that Jack of Blades has started to talk to us via Hero Seal.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a truly special occasion. Watch a hero ripped to pieces by trolls and Jack's very own minions. There is an important quest card waiting for you at the bottom of a slime pit. Jack's lovely minions are back, and they brought some puppies for our hero to play with. Can our hero withstand another wave of friendly furry beasts?
I'm not a fan of this. Jack of Blades' taunts are very cartoonish. They're almost childish in a way, and all the menace that he had in the original version of the game is kind of gone. It really feels like a completely different villain as opposed to the one that we had in the base game, which I'm just not a fan of. Once dispatched, we will get this random dude's soul, who is allegedly a king of the arena, despite the fact that we don't even get to see what he looks like. I mean, we could do all of this, but I must ask you, where's the fun in all of that? Sorry, Thunder Buddy. Just know that in another life, in another script, I wouldn't have been such a dick.
Now go. Unless you're here to take my soul. Just as you took my sister.
Well, geez, man, you just had to make me feel guilty about this, didn't you? Speaking of guilt, it's usually at this point where something hits me. What we are doing, no matter who we decide to sacrifice, is kind of messed up, isn't it? I mean, think about it. We are basically looking for souls to eternally condemned into an existence of eternal imprisonment in order to open the Bronze Gate. There's really no good or bad option here, and while the game does give you evil points for killing Thunder, it doesn't give you good points for picking the alternative, which is an interesting quirk that the game doesn't really elaborate on, sadly. Really, what separates each choice here is that one guy is alive and the other one is dead. But is the ghost of the arena all that willing to help us? He didn't even seem to be aware of what was going on when we found him. Hell, we didn't even hear his side, we just vacuumed him inside Jack's mask like this was Luigi's Mansions or something. On the other hand, Thunder is at the worst point of his life. Once considered great hero left without anything to move him forward. All because we are the hero in this story and he is only a bit player? How is that fair? Does he deserve the fate he was given? Why am I doing this whole spiel after killing him in my underwear? This time just because I could and not because of any bet. I don't know, man. You try and make this funny.
You'll have to go to the Oakvale Memorial Gardens to collect Scarlet's soul. And stop looking at me like that!
Okay, so next up we have to find the soul of a hero. Just any random woman hero will do, which is frankly a bit of an odd qualifier considering what we just had to get, but whatever. Admittedly, we haven't found a lot of heroines in our path. As a matter of fact, 2 of those are already dead and 1 is gone Avo knows where, so what do we do now?
I can't think of anyone who fits the description better than Scarlet Robe, your mother.
I'm sorry, our mom? So let's recap the situation a bit. Scarlet Robe is a powerful hero that almost gets killed by Babylons, which is a rough start. Then she gets saved by our father, that's good. She gets kidnapped after her husband is killed and her daughter got her eyes gouged out, that's bad. She gets saved by us after decades of torture, that's good. Then she gets immediately kidnapped again, that's bad. She gets killed in front of us by Jack of Blades, that's still bad. And now we're supposed to condemn her soul to eternal damnation after all of that? Good lord, give this woman a break!
You'll have to pay her tomb in Oakvale another visit. I know this won't be easy, but Scarlet was always one to make sacrifices, remember?
Actually, you know what? You make a very good point. I'm gonna go back to the Oakvale Cemetery right now.
No.
Hero.
No. No. No!
Okay, so remember that whole spiel I did with Thunder earlier? Yeah, not the case for Rose. She just kinda exists. It's Whisper all over again, isn't it? We don't get to know her too much, and unlike Thunder, whom we directly ruined the life of, there's no real reason to feel guilty about killing her and taking her soul as opposed to our mother, I guess. If you do decide to go along with our plan, you'll have to deal with screamers attacking the cemetery. Just another reason as to why listening to Briar Rose is a bad idea, but if you don't, then you're treated with a boss fight. Well, treated might be the wrong word, as there really isn't much to this fight. She thinks that just because she can create copies of herself, that she stands any chance against my obscenely overpowered invisibility shield and industrial supply size of healing items. If you had to ask me how you're able to tell which version of Briar Rose is the correct one before she attacks you, I'd have no idea, and the fact that I still consider this fight to be a nothing burger should tell you just about everything, really. This is also the moment I need to point out one thing. Despite the new regions in the game, things are not going at a fairly breakneck pace, with very little in the way of silver quests being added to this portion of the game. Fable was short, DLC is naturally shorter, but the pacing here is a bit weird. It starts fine, but now things are picking up fast and there really isn't much in the way of breathing room. It always felt to me like there's a distinct lack of a middle portion for whatever reason. Like the journey to open the Bronze Gate should feel longer instead of 3 souls needed that don't require much in the way of work to get. Even less so considering teleporting is a thing and can cut all the walking we might have needed to do. Like actually finding out how to translate the inscriptions or them being a bit more specific, I would appreciate that. I mean, compare the length of the first section of this video and then the past 2. There's not much else left for me to talk about. Whatever the case, Briar Rose is defeated, her soul sucked, and now we are one final step away from opening the Bronze Gate. Wait a minute, if Briar Rose was the one translating all of this and telling us what souls we needed, does that mean that... Ah, shit.
Your health is low. Do you have any potions or food?
Well, turns out Jacob Blakes doesn't just sound stupid, he may as well be, as he decides to take matters into his own hands and tell us what our next target is going to be. The soul of the oldest hero. Guess he really wants to be done with this quickly. You'd think Sight would be the prime candidate for the chopping block, but it seems his search for immortality must have had some results as he simply cannot be killed. Instead, Jack tells us that our next target is the Guildmaster.
Wow, the Guildmaster would be a perfect choice, don't you think? Oh, I'm going to enjoy this.
It's not that I particularly like doing what Jack tells me to do, not with that voice anyhow, but I mean, we did kill the other 2 guild heroes, may as well complete the hat trick, you know? Besides, if you ever wanted to kill Navi in Ocarina of Time, well, this isn't the same thing, but it's close, I guess? Before we can go ahead and do Baldy in, we are informed that there might be an alternative. Down in Litchfield Graveyard, we could take Nostral's soul instead, keeping the Guildmaster alive and preventing us from continuing this senseless hero carnage. Well, thanks for the offer, but I haven't come here for charity, and since I killed Thunder and Briar, I do not see why good old Weaver gets to live. We make our way to the woods, where the Master shares his thoughts with us.
I still remember the night you were brought to us, my lad. I knew even then what great potential you had, what great things you would accomplish. Such a pity it has to end like this. Can't you see Jack is using you to destroy the guild? I can't allow you to do this. Gods!
There's something about this cutscene that, like Thunder's, kind of makes me feel bad about this, not gonna lie. The music, the rain, the actual disappointment in the Guildmaster's voice. Something's off about this. They're driving the point I shouldn't be doing this pretty well. The quote-unquote fight here consists of us killing high-level guards that Weaver will occasionally buff with an invulnerability shield, which is still not enough to make this fight any hard, sadly. Once all the guards are dealt with, the old man makes us one final plea to our sanity, asking us to do the right thing and allow him to teleport us to the graveyard and collect Nostro instead. Should we take him up on his offer, Nostro is there waiting for us, thanking us for finding his armor, which he's currently wearing, nice, and seemingly being fine with us condemning him to eternal hell. Now, this is a video game and things can never be easy, so of course, because of his warrior nature, he will not give up the armor without a fight, and to make matters worse, his men, who had pledged to always defend him, will raise from the dead and make our job that much harder. I say harder as if it's actually any hard, it isn't, but Nostro doesn't seem to be all that fazed from our attacks until we kill some of his men, making this boss kinda boring. But I mean, I came here to do one thing and one thing only. Sorry, my friend.
Very well, hero. Do your worst. I am no defenseless old man. I have powers that you can't begin to...
Okay, never mind. I don't feel bad anymore. That cutscene is still funny. So that's 3 on 3. We are finally ready to unleash the end of days. Time to open the Bronze Gate and close our journey with Fable.
I am no mortal man. The gods and demons you fear and worship are as nothing to me.
We insert the Guildmaster's soul into the appropriate receptacle, and finally, the Bronze Gate opens itself to us. Even if there were any people capable of helping, only one hero can enter the gate, so it's convenient that we killed anyone willing to give us a hand. Well, except for Sight over here, but that's details.
It's been a long wait, but I knew you'd free me eventually. Yes, always the puppet. Don't you ever get tired of having your strings pulled. I am no mortal man. The gods and demons you fear and worship are as nothing to me.
You know, for as much as I dislike Jack's voice here, that line right there almost makes it worth it. Now I know what you're asking, why the hell is Jack Ablaze a dragon? And that is a very good question. See, back at Snowspire, the Oracle mentions something about Jack Ablaze being far older and far more dangerous than what we initially assumed. And the game itself, through books, does imply the existence of dragons, though not necessarily the connection between the two. It's at this point that I need to mention something that we sadly lost in its original form, that being Tales of Albion. Tales of Albion was a site, or rather an online source, that was used on LionHead's old site. It pretty much is where we get a lot of the lore that isn't mentioned in the games, and how we know a lot of the things that I'm about to tell you. Sadly, as I said, the site went the way of LionHead themselves, and effectively is no longer a thing. However, there is a version of it on the Fable wiki, which I'm gonna link in the description. It's effectively a complete transposition of the site itself, like it used to be, or at the very least, the text that was in it. Even with the Wayback Machine, I couldn't really find what the site used to look like, and unfortunately enough, the screenshot I showed earlier is the only thing that has remained of it. So yeah, that's a shame. If you want to know more about the lore of Fable, this is a veritable gold mine that has been preserved by the Fable wiki, and I'm glad that it has. To paraphrase the first tale on the site, Jack of Blades was an incredibly old entity originating from a place called the Void, that came to Albion alongside two equally old and dickish beings known as the Knight and Queen of Blades. Together they form a triumvirate known as the Court, and like any self-respecting eldritch abomination, decided it'll be funny to torture the people of Albion into submission, thus granting them power over the lands. Everything was going fine until some dude named William Black was born and, in spite of his incredibly generic name, was blessed with the ability to wield magic, which would from then on be referred to as the power of will. Yes, will in this universe is called that in reference to a guy named William. This is so silly, I can't. As it turns out, good old William wasn't too fond of the court's shenanigans, so he decided to take matters into his own hands. At first, he confronted Jack, who tried to enslave him by offering this Sword of Eons. William, as one does, decided to skip the enslaving part of the deal and just absconded with the sword, which still required him to sell his soul in order to get his full power, so that still seems like a bad deal. Scaling the highest mountain in Albion, William challenged the court, who, almost as if to prove the stupidity runs in the family, decided to attack him one at a time. First, the knight was the one to die, then Jack, then finally the queen. It was rumored, however, that Jack managed to survive the encounter and seal his soul into his now infamous mask, which would go a ways of explaining how he survived all these years. Doesn't explain why he is currently in his scaly area, but some questions are best left unanswered, I guess. So William failed to do his job fully, and now we have to deal with his lack of double tapping. But while Jack is currently alive and well, he won't be for much longer. The fight itself is sadly nothing spectacular. Jack will move from one place in the arena to the other once he takes enough damage, meaning there's quite a bit of dead air in this fight, where you can't do much other than dealing with his minions until he decides to park his ass again. Do be careful though about his fire breathing and his bites, as they deal massive damage. Besides that, this is a pretty big downgrade from the first fight in the base game, which is kinda disappointing, but it wouldn't be Fable if things didn't end on a somewhat flat note, I guess. We slay the dragon, absorb his soul into his mask, and are now faced with one final choice. Throw the mask into the nearby pit of lava, banishing Jack from this realm for good, or listen to the mask's tantalizing words and wear it, continuing Jack's cycle all over again. Had I kept the Sword of Eons, I'd take the mask to show you that with both in our possession, Jack seems to have taken complete control as shown in the hero's diary, but I didn't, so the canon option it is.
Home run!
Mask thrown into the fiery pit, we have finished the game for good. Much like the base game, after this portion there's really nothing else for us to do, and our journey is over. Peter Molyneux, at least for the time being, no longer has a leash on us.
As for what became of the guild and its heroes, that is a story for another time.
And that concludes our journey with the Lost Chapters and the first Fable game. Scores for Fable TLC were noticeably high. GameSpot gave it a 8.6, Game Informer a 9, IGN an 8.7 and GameSpy an 8, just to name but a few. Lowest I could find were a few 7s, which should still show you that the game was viewed favorably all around by critics. Most people, myself included, think this is the best way to play the original game. It's essentially a more complete version of the base product, with only one nitpick on my part, which I am sure is an unpopular opinion to begin with, regarding Jack's voice. On PC, this is also the only way for you to play Fable, as the original game, Sun's TLC, was never released there. The game is available on Steam for around €9, making it fairly accessible. It used to be backwards compatible on the Xbox 360, but not on Xbox Ones or Series consoles for whatever reason. It kinda sucks, not gonna lie, but it's not abandonware or hard to come by, so at least there's that. I like to poke fun at it a lot, but I'd be lying to you if I told you that Fable wasn't one of my favorite games ever. I've played and replayed this game time and time again, from the Xbox original to the Anniversary remake to finally, after getting a good PC, the definitive best way to play this game. Oh right, the Anniversary edition! So in February of 2014, LionHead released a remake of Fable TLC called Fable Anniversary for the Xbox 360 and computers. I suppose the idea here was to ride on the coattails of the Halo CE remake, seeing as that was a commercial success. But if I have to be honest, I didn't love how that game looked, and I definitely don't like how Fable Anniversary looks either. It runs on Unreal 3, which on the 360 had this unfortunate habit of making everyone looking plasticky and uncanny. The redesigns for a lot of the characters aren't good, especially Whisper is a massive downgrade as far as I'm concerned. But beyond that, the game is pretty much the same gameplay, story, and audio-wise. It was my first foray with the TLC portion of the game, so I own it to Anniversary, that I got to experience the expansion in the first place. But I'm not in any rush to play that version of the game anytime soon. If you want to buy it, for whatever reason, the Steam version and the Xbox One go for about the same price, at around $30 to $40. Not really worth it, in my opinion, as you're just better off getting the OG for much less. Not helping Anniversary's case is the fact that the game had a crap ton of small DLC attached to it, stuff that arguably should have been in the game to begin with. We're talking extra legendary weapons, new armor pieces, all stuff that looks cool but isn't worth the $20 price tag. To make matters even worse, this is all on-disc stuff, meaning that it should be available to everyone from the get-go, but the problem is, they're all behind a paywall. So, you know, that sucks. If I am gonna praise Anniversary for one thing, is the addition of Heroic Mode. It's effectively a new difficulty where resurrection files are completely removed from the game, enemies are tougher, and healing items are a lot more scarce, effectively making Fable a harder experience than it was originally. I've never played it, personally, and probably I should, but it is a nice little addition all the same, and I am glad that it's there. And that's that. Fable has a special place in my heart as one of my earliest intros in the RPG genre, and I can't thank it enough for it, flaws and all. Though, and I think this has to be said, unlike movies, video game sequels tend to do better than the original. I guess you could say that this isn't the end of the story, but just one of its chapters.